When I hit send on that email, I was sitting in my car across from the Hamilton Grand Hotel, the same hotel where I'd tracked them to 11 times over the past 6 months. My finger hovered over the button for maybe 3 seconds. Then I pressed it, leaned back in my seat, and watched my phone light up with notification after notification as the message reached 47 recipients simultaneously. Within 90 seconds, I saw him rush out of the hotel lobby, phone pressed to his ear, face pale even from 50 yards away. 2 minutes after that, my phone rang. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. Then I started my car and drove to my lawyer's office because I knew exactly what was about to happen next. My name is Nathan Caldwell, and 6 months before I sent that email, I genuinely believed I had it all figured out. I was 39 years old, running a successful commercial real estate development firm that I'd built from the ground up over 12 years. My wife, Victoria, was a senior marketing director at Horizon Media Group, one of the top advertising agencies in the city. We'd been married for 8 years, together for 11. We had a beautiful home in Ashwood Heights, took quarterly vacations, and from the outside, we were the definition of a power couple. I'm not going to pretend our marriage was perfect, what marriage is after 8 years. But I thought we were solid. I thought we communicated. I thought we were partners. The irony is that I first suspected something was wrong because of work, not because of anything she did directly. In early March, I lost 3 major clients in the span of 2 weeks. These weren't small contracts. We're talking multi-million-dollar development projects that I'd spent months courting. Each one gave me a variation of the same excuse. They decided to go with a competitor who better understood their vision, who'd presented more innovative marketing approaches, who just seemed more aligned with their brand identity. That last part stuck with me because marketing wasn't usually the deciding factor in commercial real estate development. Location, cost projections, timeline, regulatory expertise, those were the factors that won contracts. Marketing was important, but it wasn't typically the deal-breaker. The competitor who'd beaten me out all 3 times was a firm called Apex Development Group, run by a guy named Derek Hutchinson. I'd known Derek for about 5 years. We moved in the same professional circles, attended the same industry conferences, belonged to the same business associations. We weren't friends, but we were civil. Professional rivals who respected each other's work, or so I thought. Derek was 42, divorced about 3 years prior, and had a reputation for being aggressive in business but generally playing by the rules. His firm was slightly larger than mine, with maybe 15 more employees and a bit more capital backing, but we were competitive. We'd won some bids against each other, lost some bids against each other. That's how the industry worked, but 3 losses in 2 weeks, all to the same competitor, and all citing superior marketing vision, that felt wrong. That felt orchestrated. I started paying closer attention. I began reviewing my proposal strategies, trying to figure out where I was losing the edge. I hired a consultant to review my pitch materials. I even considered poaching a marketing specialist from a rival firm to beef up that side of my presentations. But something in my gut told me this wasn't about my weaknesses. This was about someone else's unfair advantage. It was late one Tuesday evening, March 19th, when Victoria came home 3 hours later than usual. She'd been staying late at the office more frequently over the past 2 months, which I hadn't thought much about because her agency had landed a huge new client and she was heading up the account. When she walked in that night, I was working in my home office, and I called out to her that there was leftover pasta in the fridge if she was hungry. She poked her head into my office, and I noticed she looked flushed. Her hair was slightly messy, her lipstick was gone, and there was something in her expression, a mixture of guilt and exhilaration, that made my stomach drop before my brain even processed why. "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Late client dinner," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "The Riverside restaurant." You know how these pitch meetings go, drinks, appetizers, more drinks, suddenly it's 10:30. "Which client?" I asked. She hesitated for half a second. "The Morrison Hotel's account. We're trying to secure their entire rebranding campaign for their Southeast expansion." I nodded slowly. "That sounds like a big opportunity. How'd it go?" "Really well," she said, her confidence returning now that she was talking about work. "I think we've got them hooked. Richard wants me to draw up a full proposal by Friday." Richard was her boss, the VP of Client Relations at Horizon Media. I'd met him a few times at company events. Nice enough guy, mid-50s, happily married with 3 kids. That's great, honey, I said. I'm glad it's working out. She smiled, kissed me on the forehead, and went upstairs to shower. I sat there in my office for probably 10 minutes just staring at my computer screen without really seeing it because something about that entire interaction felt off. The way she'd hesitated. The way she'd looked. The fact that she'd mentioned a specific restaurant without me asking for details, which is what people do when they're establishing an alibi. I opened my laptop and pulled up the website for the Riverside restaurant. Then I called them. Hi, I said when the hostess answered. This might be an odd question, but my wife had a business dinner there tonight, and she left her portfolio folder behind. I was wondering if anyone had turned it into your lost and found. What time was she dining? The hostess asked. Should have been around 7:30 or 8, I said. Let me check with our evening manager, she said. She put me on hold for maybe 90 seconds. When she came back, her voice was apologetic. I'm sorry, sir, but we didn't have any large parties or business dinners this evening. We had a pretty quiet Tuesday, actually. Just couples and a few small groups. No one turned in any folders or business materials. Are you sure? I pressed. The reservation might have been under Morrison Hotels or Horizon Media Group. Looking at our reservation system right now, she said. We had no corporate bookings today at all. Perhaps she went to our sister location across town? Maybe so, I said. Thank you for checking. I hung up and sat there feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under me. She'd lied. Directly, specifically, confidently lied to my face about where she'd been. Which meant either she'd been somewhere she didn't want me to know about, or she'd been with someone she didn't want me to know about. Or both. I didn't confront her that night. I've watched enough of these stories unfold, heard enough cautionary tales from divorced friends to know that confronting someone without evidence just puts them on guard. They get better at hiding. They get more careful. They might even flip the script and accuse you of being paranoid or controlling. So instead, I did what any rational person would do in the age of technology. I started gathering information. The next morning, I installed a location tracking app on our shared phone plan. Completely legal since I was the account holder and we had a family sharing plan. I also started paying much closer attention to her schedule, her moods, her patterns. And I started documenting everything in a password-protected file on my computer. Dates, times, inconsistencies, lies. For the next 2 weeks, I watched and waited. Victoria stayed late at the office twice more. Both times, her location data showed her phone at Horizon Media's office building, so those checked out. She had a Saturday meeting that she claimed was with a client at a coffee shop downtown. Her phone's location confirmed it. I started to think maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe that Tuesday dinner had been an honest mistake about which restaurant. Maybe she'd been at a different client meeting and got confused about the details. Then came April 3rd, a Friday. Victoria told me that morning she had an all-day strategy session with her team that would probably run until 7 or 8 at night. I told her no problem, I had contract reviews to work on anyway, I'd probably just order takeout and eat at my desk. I watched the location tracker throughout the day. Until noon, her phone was at Horizon Media's building. Then it moved, not to a restaurant for lunch, not to a client's office. It moved to the Hamilton Grand Hotel on the north side of downtown. And it stayed there for 3 hours. I sat in my office, staring at that little blue dot on my screen and felt something cold and hard settle into my chest. The Hamilton Grand wasn't where you went for business lunches or client meetings. It was where you went for romantic weekend getaways and anniversaries. It had a 5-star restaurant, a rooftop bar, and 200 luxury rooms. And my wife's phone had been in that building for 3 hours in the middle of a workday. At 4:15, the dot moved again. Back to Horizon Media's office where it stayed until 6:30 when she texted me saying she was heading home. When she walked in that evening, I was sitting in the living room with a glass of whiskey. How was your day? I asked. Exhausting, she said, dropping her bag on the floor and collapsing onto the couch beside me. 6 straight hours of brainstorming and strategy talks. My brain is fried. Did you at least break for lunch? I asked. We ordered in, she said without hesitation. Sandwiches from that deli on Morrison Street. 8. While we worked, I took a sip of my whiskey and nodded. That sounds productive. She curled up against me, resting her head on my shoulder, and we sat like that for probably 20 minutes, watching some cooking show on TV. The whole time I was thinking about that blue dot at the Hamilton Grand Hotel. The whole time I was thinking about the lie she'd just told me, so casual and effortless. And the whole time I was making a decision about what I was going to do next. That weekend, I told Victoria I needed to fly to Denver on Tuesday for a potential client meeting. Completely fabricated. Instead, I spent Monday evening setting up a surveillance operation that I'm not particularly proud of, but which turned out to be absolutely necessary. I rented a car under my business name, parked it across from the Hamilton Grand Hotel at 11 on Tuesday morning, and waited. At 1:15, Victoria's car pulled into the hotel's parking garage. At 1:22, Derek Hutchinson's Mercedes pulled in behind her. I sat there with a telephoto lens camera that I'd borrowed from my photographer friend under the pretense of wanting to take nature shots on a hiking trip, and I photographed Derek walking into the hotel lobby. 15 minutes later, I photographed Victoria walking into the same lobby, dressed in a way that definitely wasn't business casual. She was wearing a navy dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago, heels I'd only seen her wear for special occasions, and she'd clearly spent extra time on her hair and makeup. I waited in that car for 3.5 hours. At 4:50, they came out together. Not touching, not holding hands, but walking close enough that their arms brushed. They stood by Victoria's car for maybe 5 minutes talking. At one point, Derek reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She smiled up at him. They kissed, not a long kiss, but not a quick peck either. Then she got in her car and he got in his, and they drove away in different directions. I sat there for another 20 minutes just processing what I'd witnessed. Then I drove to a coffee shop, ordered a black coffee I didn't drink, and opened my laptop. I started a new document. I titled it Evidence, and I began planning exactly how I was going to destroy both of them. Here's the thing about betrayal that nobody tells you. The initial shock and hurt last maybe 48 hours. After that, if you're wired a certain way, something else kicks in. Something colder and more calculating. I wasn't interested in screaming matches or dramatic confrontations. I wasn't interested in immediate revenge that would feel good for 10 minutes and accomplish nothing permanent. I was interested in total, complete, irreversible destruction of everything they'd built. And I was interested in doing it legally, strategically, and so thoroughly that neither of them would ever fully recover. Over the next 5 months, I became someone I didn't quite recognize. I went to work every day, smiled at clients, managed my team, came home to Victoria and acted like a loving husband. I had dinner with her, I watched movies with her. I even made love to her, though I'll admit that became increasingly difficult as the weeks went on. But I did it all because I needed her to have absolutely no idea what was coming. I needed her comfortable and complacent. I needed her to keep making mistakes, and she did. They both did. I tracked Victoria to the Hamilton Grand 6 more times over the next 3 months. I photographed them entering and leaving. I documented the dates and times. I pulled our credit card statements and bank records and found that she'd been withdrawing $200 in cash every week for the past 4 months. Cash that wasn't showing up in any of her usual spending patterns. I checked the odometer on her car against her supposed work schedule and found discrepancies of 50 to 70 miles multiple times per month. I recovered deleted text messages using data recovery software on our shared computer. Most were banal, making plans to meet, confirming times, but a few were more incriminating. References to our place, to that thing you do that drives me crazy, to I can't wait to have a whole weekend with you. But here's what made it truly beautiful, truly perfect for what I had planned. While I was investigating Victoria's affair, I stumbled onto something even better. I discovered that Derek wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using her. It happened almost by accident. I was reviewing my lost contracts from March and April, trying to identify patterns, and I noticed something interesting. 2 of the 3 clients I'd lost had specifically mentioned innovative marketing approaches in their rejection emails. One had even said, "Your competitor clearly had insider knowledge of our brand priorities and pain points that allowed them to tailor their pitch more effectively." Insider knowledge of their brand priorities. Victoria worked in marketing at Horizon Media. Horizon Media represented one of the 3 clients I'd lost. She would have had access to confidential client information, strategy documents, brand messaging frameworks, everything a competitor would need to craft a pitch that hit all the right notes. I spent a week investigating. I called in a few favors from friends in the industry, asked careful questions, did some digging through public records and business filings. What I found was a pattern. Over the past 18 months, Derek's firm had won 7 contracts against various competitors, not just me, where the clients had all cited superior understanding of their marketing needs and brand identity. 5 of those 7 clients were current or former clients of Horizon Media Group. Victoria had worked on 3 of those accounts personally, had access to confidential information on all 5. Derek was using Victoria's access to proprietary client information to give his firm an unfair competitive advantage, which meant he wasn't just having an affair with my wife. He was committing corporate espionage and potentially violating multiple non-compete agreements, confidentiality contracts, and possibly even securities regulations if any of the companies involved were publicly traded. That's when I knew I had them both. Not just for adultery, which is morally wrong but legally unimpressive in a no-fault divorce state. I had them for actionable, career-destroying, potentially criminal behavior. I spent the next 2 months building an airtight case. I hired a private investigator to follow both of them and document their meetings. I hired a forensic accountant to trace money movements and identify any financial transactions between Derek's firm and Victoria. I hired a corporate attorney who specialized in non-compete and trade secret litigation to review all my findings and help me understand exactly what laws were being broken and what evidence I'd need to prove it. The investigator confirmed 9 more hotel meetings over 2 months. The accountant found a series of cash deposits into Victoria's personal savings account, an account I didn't have access to and didn't know existed, totaling $16,000 over 6 months, each deposit made within a week of Apex Development winning a major contract. The attorney confirmed that Victoria's actions constituted a clear breach of her employment contract with Horizon Media, that Derek's use of proprietary information likely violated trade secret statutes, and that I had grounds for multiple civil suits. But I didn't want civil suits. I wanted total annihilation. I wanted them both to lose everything they cared about in a single afternoon, and I wanted it to happen in the most public, humiliating way possible. That's when I came up with the email. I spent 3 weeks crafting it. The subject line was simple: evidence of corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty. The body was 2 paragraphs explaining what I'd discovered, written in formal business language, completely professional and devoid of any emotion or personal grievance. Then came the attachments. 47 separate attachments, all meticulously labeled and organized at 23 photographs of Victoria and Derek entering and leaving the Hamilton Grand Hotel over 6 months, each image time-stamped and location-stamped. 12 screenshots of deleted text messages between them, recovered from our shared computer backup, including several that explicitly referenced client information and contract details. Bank statements showing Victoria's mystery cash deposits, cross-referenced with dates that Apex Development won major contracts. A forensic analysis from my accountant showing the correlation between Victoria's information access and Derek's contract wins. Credit card statements showing hotel room charges on Derek's corporate card, matching the dates and times Victoria's phone, was tracked to the Hamilton Grand Hotel. A legal memorandum from my attorney outlining the potential violations of trade secret law, breach of contract, and fiduciary duty. Signed affidavits from 3 of my former clients stating that Derek's firm had presented proposals containing information that was surprisingly specific to their internal brand strategy discussions. And finally, a timeline document that laid out the entire affair month by month, meeting by meeting, contract by contract, creating an undeniable pattern of behavior. Then came the question of recipients. I didn't want to just send this to a few people and hope it spread. I wanted immediate, catastrophic impact. So I compiled a list, all 17 members of Apex Development's board of directors and major investors. The CEO and entire executive team at Horizon Media Group, including Victoria's direct boss and the HR director. The legal departments of both companies. All 5 of the clients whose information had been compromised, sent to their CEOs and general counsel. The 3 former clients I'd lost to Derek, sent to their decision-makers. My own attorney, accountant, and private investigator, as confirmation that everything was documented and legally sound. And finally, Victoria's parents and my parents, because I wanted the families to know exactly what had happened before either of them could spin their own version of events. 47 recipients total. 47 people who would receive this evidence simultaneously, giving neither Derek nor Victoria any chance to get ahead of it, to control the narrative, or to hide. I scheduled the email to send at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, September 12th. I chose that date deliberately. Derek had a crucial board meeting that afternoon with potential investors considering a $30 million capital infusion into his firm. Victoria had a major presentation at 3 p.m. pitching a Fortune 500 client that would be the biggest account of her career. I wanted the email to hit right in the middle of their professional triumph moments. I wanted them to watch everything collapse in real time. The night before, I packed 2 suitcases and moved them to my car while Victoria was asleep. I withdrew half of our joint savings, completely legal since both our names were on the account, and moved it to a new account at a different bank. I changed all my passwords, secured all my business documents, and made copies of everything I might need for the divorce proceedings. I spent the night in a hotel, lying awake, thinking about what was about to happen. The next morning, I drove to my lawyer's office and signed divorce papers. My attorney had already filed them with the court, but they wouldn't be served until after the email went out. I wanted the email to hit first. I wanted the professional destruction to happen before the personal destruction, because I knew that once people saw what they'd done in business, they'd have zero sympathy for what happened in their personal lives. At 1:30 p.m., I drove across town and parked in that spot across from the Hamilton Grand Hotel, the same spot I'd parked in dozens of times over the past 6 months. I sat there with my laptop open, watching the clock. At 1:55, I refreshed my email to make sure everything was still queued properly. At 1:58, I closed my eyes and took 3 deep breaths. At 2 p.m. exactly, I hit send. Then I opened a tracking software that showed me when each recipient opened the email. Within 3 minutes, 12 of the 47 had opened it. Within 5 minutes, 28. Within 8 minutes, all 47. At 2:09, my phone started ringing. It was Victoria. I didn't answer. It rang 4 more times in the next 10 minutes. Then Derek's number appeared on my screen. I declined that call too. At 2:15, I saw Derek burst out of the office building where Apex Development was headquartered. He was on his phone, gesturing wildly, looking around like he expected cameras or police or something. His face was red. Even from across the street, I could see the panic. At 2:27, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria's number. "Nathan, what did you do? What the fuck did you do? Call me right now." I put my phone on silent and kept watching. Over the next hour, I received 43 phone calls and 68 text messages. Victoria, Derek, Victoria's mother, my mother, Victoria's boss, Derek's business partner, several people I didn't recognize. I ignored all of them. Instead, I called my friend Trevor, who worked in commercial real estate finance and always seemed to know everything happening in the industry. "Have you heard anything interesting today?" I asked him. "Holy shit, Nathan," he said. "Are you serious right now? It's all over the industry. Derek Hutchinson is finished. Apex Development's board called an emergency meeting, and word is they've already suspended him pending investigation. 2 of their major investors pulled out completely. Their stock, he privately held, but they have investor shares. Their stock dropped 40% in an hour. His business partner is apparently threatening to sue him personally. It's a complete meltdown. What about Horizon Media?" I asked. Trevor paused. "That's your wife's company, right?" "Yes," I said. Another pause. "Nathan, I'm sorry, man. She was terminated at 2:45. Security escorted her out of the building." Their CEO released an internal memo saying they're conducting a full investigation into breach of client confidentiality and that anyone involved will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I have a friend who works there. He said it was brutal. She was in the middle of a presentation when her boss got the email, called her out of the conference room, and fired her on the spot in front of witnesses. I thanked Trevor and hung up. I sat in my car for another 20 minutes, just processing the fact that it had actually worked. That 6 months of planning and investigation and careful documentation had resulted in exactly what I'd hoped for. Total, complete destruction. My phone rang again. This time it was my attorney. I answered. "Nathan," he said, "you magnificent bastard. I've already received calls from 3 separate lawyers representing various parties involved in your email. Derek Hutchinson's firm wants to negotiate to avoid further legal action. Horizon Media wants assurance that you're not planning to sue them for negligent supervision of their employee. Two of your former clients want to know if you're interested in discussing new contracts now that they understand how they were manipulated. And your wife's attorney wants to discuss settlement terms for the divorce. What did you tell them? I asked. I told Derek's lawyers to fuck off, that you had ironclad documentation and zero interest in negotiation. I told Horizon Media that you'd consider not pursuing legal action if they cooperated fully with your divorce proceedings and confirmed Victoria's termination in writing. I told your former clients you'd be happy to meet with them next week. And I told Victoria's attorney that you'd filed for divorce this morning, that you had grounds for fault-based proceedings due to adultery and financial misconduct, and that if she wanted to avoid a protracted legal battle, she should consider settling quickly and quietly. Perfect, I said. Nathan, my attorney, said, his voice serious now. I have to ask, are you okay? I know this was strategic and calculated, but this was still your wife, your marriage. Are you handling this all right? I thought about that for a moment. Was I okay? Honestly, I didn't know. I felt satisfied. I felt vindicated. I felt powerful in a way I'd never felt before, but I also felt empty, hollow, like I'd won the battle but lost something fundamental in the process. I'll be fine, I told him. Send me whatever paperwork I need to review. I hung up and finally drove away from that parking spot across from the Hamilton Grand Hotel. I drove to my new apartment, a furnished two-bedroom I'd rented the week before under my business name. I walked inside, set my phone on the kitchen counter, and poured myself 3 fingers of scotch. Then my phone rang one more time. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Nathan, please. Victoria's voice was wrecked, broken in a way I'd never heard before. Please, you have to understand. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Like what I said, my voice cold. I never meant to hurt you, she said. And the business thing, I didn't know that's what he was doing. I thought he just really cared about me. I thought we had something real. You gave him confidential client information, I said. You took cash payments. You helped him steal 7 contracts from various competitors, 3 of them directly from me. You're telling me you had no idea what was happening. She was crying now. I was stupid. I was so stupid. Nathan, please, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but please don't let them prosecute me. Derek told me those payments were gifts. He said he wanted to help me save up for a future together. I didn't know he was using me for information. I swear I didn't know. I took a long drink of scotch. Whether you knew or not doesn't change what happened. You betrayed me. You betrayed your company. You betrayed your clients. And now there are consequences. I've lost everything, she sobbed. My job, my reputation, my marriage. My parents won't even talk to me. Richard told me I'm probably going to be sued by multiple clients. Nathan, please don't let them destroy me. I didn't destroy you, Victoria, I said quietly. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone else knew about it. I hung up. She called back immediately. I blocked her number. Over the next 3 weeks, the fallout was extraordinary. Derek Hutchinson's board of directors voted unanimously to remove him as CEO and initiated legal proceedings to recover damages. His business partner bought out his shares at a fraction of their value and rebranded the company to distance themselves from the scandal. 3 of the 5 clients whose information had been compromised filed civil suits against both Derek and Victoria personally. The largest of those suits was for $12 million in damages related to compromised competitive positioning. Victoria's termination from Horizon Media became a case study in the industry about the importance of confidentiality protocols. Her boss, Richard, called me personally to apologize for not catching the breach sooner and to assure me that the company was implementing new security measures. He also mentioned, carefully, that Victoria had been blacklisted from every major agency in the tri-state area. No one would hire her. Her career in marketing was effectively over. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly quick. Victoria's attorney advised her to settle immediately, acknowledging that fighting would only result in more public exposure of the affair and the corporate espionage. She agreed to a settlement that gave me the house, 70% of our combined assets, and sole ownership of a vacation property we'd purchased together in the mountains. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue separate civil litigation against her personally. The divorce was finalized in 63 days. But here's where the story gets interesting, where the business revenge transcended the personal drama. Remember those 3 former clients I'd lost to Derek? The ones who'd mentioned his superior marketing insights in their rejection emails. 2 weeks after my email went out, all 3 reached out to me directly. They wanted to meet. They wanted to discuss new contracts. They wanted to apologize for being deceived. The first meeting was with Gerald Templeton, the CEO of Templeton Commercial Properties. We met at his office on a Tuesday morning. He was a distinguished man in his mid-60s, built his company over 30 years, and had a reputation for integrity. "Nathan," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "I owe you an apology. When Derek Hutchinson presented his proposal to us last April, I was impressed by how thoroughly he seemed to understand our needs. He knew details about our expansion plans that I thought were simply the result of excellent research. I didn't realize he'd had inappropriate access to our confidential strategy sessions with Horizon Media. I appreciate you saying that," I told him. He leaned back in his chair. "I've reviewed your original proposal from last year. It was solid, very solid. We made a mistake choosing Apex over your firm. I'd like to rectify that if you're interested. We're planning a $40 million mixed-use development in the Riverside district. It's exactly the kind of project your firm specializes in. I'd like you to submit a proposal. Be honored," I said. Over the next month, I had similar meetings with the other two clients. Both resulted in new contracts. Combined, the three deals represented $73 million in development projects, more than twice the value of what I'd lost to Derek's cheating. My firm went from struggling to recover from lost contracts to having the most profitable quarter in our history. But the real vindication came 4 months later, in January, when I attended the Commercial Real Estate Development Association's annual conference. It's a major industry event, 3 days of panels, networking exhibitions, and an awards ceremony on the final night. I'd attended every year since I started my firm. This year was different. This year, everyone knew who I was, not just as Nathan Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Development. They knew me as the guy who'd taken down Derek Hutchinson, the guy who'd exposed the biggest corporate espionage scandal the industry had seen in years. I walked into the opening reception, and the room practically parted. People I'd never met came up to congratulate me. Competitors I'd faced in bidding wars shook my hand and told me Derek had stolen from them too, that they suspected it but never had proof. Investors I'd been trying to connect with for years suddenly wanted meetings. And then I saw him, Derek, standing near the bar alone, nursing a drink. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. His suit was slightly wrinkled. His face was drawn. He saw me at the same moment I saw him, and for about 5 seconds we just stared at each other across the crowded room. Then he started walking toward me. I considered leaving, considered turning away, but something made me stay put. "Nathan," he said when he reached me. His voice was hoarse. "Can we talk?" "We're talking," I said. He glanced around at the crowd, many of whom were watching us with barely concealed interest. Some were more private. Against my better judgment, I followed him out to a quiet hallway near the conference rooms. "I know you hate me," he started. "I know I deserve it, but I need you to understand something." "I don't need to understand anything," I said. He pressed on anyway. "I didn't plan for it to happen with Victoria. It started as a professional connection. She reached out to me after we met at a networking event, said she admired my firm's marketing approach, wanted advice. We had coffee, then lunch, then it became more. I didn't seduce her to get information. I didn't set out to destroy your marriage to steal your contracts. But you took advantage once the affair started," I said flatly. He looked at the floor. "Yes, I did. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. You'll regret getting caught," I corrected. "If I hadn't discovered it, you'd still be doing it." He looked up at me, and I saw something genuine in his eyes for the first time. "Maybe, probably, I don't know anymore. What I do know is that I lost everything. My company, my reputation, my investor relationships. I'm blacklisted. I had to sell my house to pay legal fees. My ex-wife took my kids across the country, and I barely see them now because I can't afford the flights. I'm 42 years old, and I'm starting over from nothing." "Good," I said simply. He flinched. "You really hate me that much? You didn't just betray me professionally," I said, keeping my voice level. "You slept with my wife. You used intimate information she shared about my business, my strategies, my clients. You turned something personal into something predatory. So yes, Derek, I hate you exactly that much." He nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, she really did love you. She told me that all the time, said she didn't know why she couldn't stop seeing me when she knew what she had with you was real." "That doesn't make me feel better," I said. "That makes it worse." He opened his mouth to say something else, then closed it. Finally, he just said, "I'm sorry, for whatever." It's worth nothing," I told him. "Absolutely nothing." I walked away and didn't look back. That was the last time I saw Derek Hutchinson. I heard through the industry grapevine that he moved to Phoenix 6 months later and took a middle management position at a small commercial real estate firm for a fraction of his former salary. His name occasionally comes up in industry discussions as a cautionary tale about ethics violations and corporate espionage. Victoria tried to reach out to me several times over the next year. Emails, text messages from new numbers after I blocked her old ones, even a letter sent to my office. I never responded. Her parents reached out once asking if there was any possibility of reconciliation. I told them politely but firmly that there was not. My mother asked me the same question. I gave her the same answer. About 18 months after the divorce was finalized, I heard that Victoria had moved to Portland and was working as a freelance marketing consultant under her maiden name. She'd had to rebuild her entire professional identity from scratch. I felt nothing when I heard that. No satisfaction, no pity, no residual anger. Just complete indifference. The truth is the emotional part of the revenge, the satisfying destruction of their lives that only felt good for about a week. After that, it was just empty. Just a task that had been completed, but the professional resurrection, the business victories that came from exposing the truth, those have lasted. My firm has grown by 40% since that day I sent the email. We've hired 12 new employees. We've won contracts in 3 new markets. I've been asked to speak on panels about business ethics and competitive integrity. I've become a respected voice in the industry, not just for my work, but for my willingness to expose corruption even when it cost me personally. I started dating again about a year after the divorce. Nothing serious at first. I wasn't ready. Didn't trust easily, carried too much baggage. But eventually I met someone. Her name is Rebecca. She's an architect, runs her own small firm, and we met when we both bid on the same project and decided to collaborate instead of compete. She's brilliant, direct, completely honest, and she knew my whole story before we went on our first date because she'd heard about it through the industry. We've been together for 8 months now. It's different than it was with Victoria. Slower, more deliberate. Built on complete transparency because I insisted on that from day one and she respected it. She knows I have trust issues. She knows I struggle with the idea of fully letting someone in, and she's patient with all of it. Last month, Rebecca and I took a weekend trip to the mountains, to that vacation property I'd kept in the divorce settlement. We hadn't been there together before. It was the first time I'd been back since before everything fell apart with Victoria. We were sitting on the deck, watching the sunset over the valley, and Rebecca asked me something no one had asked before. "Do you regret it?" she said. "The way you handled everything. The email. The total destruction approach. I thought about that for a long time before answering." "Do you want the honest answer or the noble answer?" I asked. "The honest answer," she said. "No," I told her. "I don't regret it at all. They destroyed me first. They betrayed me personally and professionally. They broke laws and violated ethics and did it all while I trusted them. What I did was just make sure there were real consequences, make sure they couldn't do it to anyone else, make sure justice actually happened instead of just being talked about." She nodded slowly. "And if you could go back and do it differently, I wouldn't change a thing," I said. "Except maybe I'd have sent the email sooner." She smiled at that. "That's what I thought you'd say. Does that bother you?" I asked. "That I'm not sorry for ruining their lives." "Should it?" She countered. "I don't know," I admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if there was a better way, a kinder way, if I should have just gotten the divorce quietly and moved on without the public destruction." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "They stole from you, from your clients. They lied and cheated and used intimacy as a weapon. You didn't ruin their lives, Nathan. You just made sure everyone else knew what they'd already done to themselves. There's a difference." "Maybe," I said. She took my hand. "You know what I think? I think you did exactly what needed to be done. You protected yourself. You protected your business. You protected future clients from being victimized the same way. And you sent a very clear message that actions have consequences. That's not cruelty. That's justice." Looking back now, almost 2 years after I hit send on that email, I think she's right. I don't see what I did as revenge. I see it as accountability. Derek and Victoria made choices, calculated, deliberate, ongoing choices, to betray me in the worst possible ways. They could have stopped at any point. They could have confessed. They could have chosen differently. They didn't. All I did was make sure the truth came out. Make sure their actions had consequences. Make sure that their betrayal didn't just hurt me privately while they continued to profit publicly. Some people might call that ruthless. Some might call it over the top. But here's what I know. Derek Hutchinson can never again use someone's trust to steal their business. Victoria can never again betray a client's confidential information for personal gain. And dozens of other people in this industry saw what happened and understood that there are real penalties for that kind of behavior. If I'd just gotten divorced quietly, if I'd just walked away without exposing what they'd done, they would have continued. Derek would have found another source for insider information. Victoria would have rationalized her behavior and done it again with someone else. The clients who were victimized would never have known. The industry would have continued to have a predator operating in its midst. Instead, the truth came out. Justice was served. And I built something even stronger from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. That's not revenge. That's accountability. And I'll never apologize for demanding it. Today, I'm 41 years old. I run a thriving business that I'm proud of. I have a relationship built on honesty and trust. I have respect in my industry. I sleep soundly at night knowing that I didn't let betrayal break me. I let it forge me into something stronger. And if I ever see Derek Hutchinson again, if I ever hear Victoria's name in conversation, I'll feel nothing. Because they're not part of my story anymore. They're just a chapter that taught me exactly how powerful truth and accountability can be when you're willing to use them without apology. That email didn't destroy 2 lives. It revealed 2 people who'd already destroyed themselves. I just made sure everyone else got to see it too, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.